Welcome to Power Lunch Time. I'm Rhett Power, your host. It's good to be with you today. This year is already flying by. It's absolutely amazing. But I've got somebody that I've been wanting to speak to for a long time, and we hadn't gotten a chance. And I finally was able to get her on the program today, the week of her book launch, which I feel really blessed to be able to do, because I know it's been a crazy, hectic week for her. So the question today on Power Lunch Live, and the whole point of the show is to have today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work, creating amazing work that we all should be paying attention to, that can help us get better at what we do. And so the question today, and I loved her some of the material that was put out about the book, and the question was, what do astronauts, Olympic champions, and Nobel laureates do differently that allows them to achieve at such a high level? I think that's such a fascinating question. I've got Dr. Ruth Gotian today. She's done extensive research on what makes people very successful. She's an educator, an author, a coach, and a speaker on the subject of optimizing success. And she's incredibly inspiring. I'm amazed to call her a colleague in the 100 Coaches program that we're both part of. Her new book is called The Success Factor, and we have her on the program today. Welcome.
Hey, Rhett. I am so excited that we finally were able to sit here and chat about a topic I can totally geek out about, success. So this is awesome. I'm so glad that we're connecting.
Yeah, me too. I mean, because it's sort of the $1 million question, right? It's like, what sets people apart? And I mean, I ask people this all the time in my work. I was just talking to I coach athletes, and I was having a discussion last night about this. This guy plays for Barcelona, and we were talking about, what it gives you that edge, right? And what gives him that edge to be able to play at that level that he plays at. But I want to ask you first, before we dive into success. So what made you have to write this book? Like what was the thing that sort of that clicked in your mind? It's like, I've just got to write this book.
It's interesting because I've been doing research on success for years, on extreme success, so much so that at the age of 43, I actually went back to school to get my doctorate, to study it at a deep level, right? Getting a doctorate while working full time, you have to be all in when you decide to do that. And that was my original work on physician scientists. And from there, it just expanded to other industries because most research is on one industry, and I wanted to cross-pollinate. And in March 2020, my dad was in the hospital. And as I would sit there with him, I was sitting there working on my computer, trying to get work done. And several times a day, he would say, "Ruth, are you getting ideas for your next book?" And I'm thinking, no, I'm just trying to keep you alive here. And shortly after he passed away is when a publisher actually reached out to me about publishing a book. And I knew that was just the nudge from my dad. And that's why I wrote The Success Factor. It started from his nudge.
Absolutely. Sometimes we make those connections, and it takes it comes in around in a strange way or a roundabout way, but I get that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You've interviewed some really interesting people, successful people. What were some of the interviews that you did for the book that really jump out at you or just blew you away? Like, are there a couple? There have to be some that really just blew you away. Like they weren't.
There were definitely a few incredible ones, and there's some that are more household names now. People like Dr. Tony Fauci, who I was fortunate enough to interview him before COVID. And fun fact, we had to reschedule 3 times because he kept having to go testify before Congress. But I asked him, he's worked on every major pandemic, HIV, AIDS, SARS,
Mhm.
Ebola. So when COVID came around, he has been doing this for decades. And I asked him, I said, well, how do you decide what projects to take on? And he told me something that my mentor, Bert Shapiro, told me years earlier. He said, you do something important, not just interesting. Because if it's interesting, that's a hobby and no one else is really going to be interested in it. But if it's important, it can have an impact. And he was actually the architect of PEPFAR, which was
Right.
President Bush's
Highly successful.
HIV/AIDS blueprint. It
Yeah.
impacted 8 million
Right.
people. So
Saved
that
millions of
was
lives.
really fascinating. Saved millions and millions of lives. So getting to hear it directly from him, how do you decide what to work on, right? And how, of all these things that you could possibly work on, that do something important, not just interesting. That to me was fascinating. The other one is I always, when I interview, especially Olympians, I always ask them to show me their medals afterwards. The Olympians, the Paralympians, only 2 of them had it on display. Everyone else, it was in a box under the bed. It was in the safe. It was
Why?
one NFL Hall of Famer has it in his mom's basement. One, Scott Hamilton, the figure skater, gave them all away to the Figure Skating Hall of Fame. And Apollo Ono had it in a brown paper bag in his sock drawer. And I was thinking, if
Why?
I won an Olympic medal, I would wear it to the supermarket, right?
Why
and
is
and
that?
I and I asked them, and in fact, I had my book launch event last night, and some of the people who were in the book were there, and we actually got to talk about it firsthand with them. And all of them said it over and over and over again is that it's about the journey. It's not about the medal. It's about being able to do something you didn't even think was possible. And that's why they don't quit after they get their medal. I don't know of a single Nobel Prize winner who quit doing science after they won the Nobel. The Olympians usually go on to train for the World Championships right after the Olympics or the Paralympics. It's not about the medal. It's pushing boundaries, creating paradigm shifts. So I thought that was really fascinating. And then, of course, Steve Kerr, the 8-time NBA champion, just his ideas on values, but not just having values, but living your values and bringing them to your work, to your job, and how that makes the work so much more fun and it allows you to be your authentic self. I mean, to hear that from an 8-time NBA champion was just incredible.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I'm that's a surprising. That surprises me. Like I think I'm like you. I think I would wear my to the to the grocery store.
Right,
Um,
exactly. The other thing that really
but
surprised me was the astronauts. All of
uh,
them, except for one, were not accepted the first time out. They had to reapply often. And in fact,
okay,
Dr. Peggy Whitson had to reapply for 10 years. And I found that interesting that she never gave up, though. And it's a good thing that she didn't because she became the first female commander of the International Space Station, a role she held twice. She became NASA's chief astronaut, completely overhauling the training. And she spent more days in space than any American astronaut of any gender. So she had to apply and was rejected and apply and was rejected over and over again for 10 years, but she stuck it out. And she said everything she learned, she was still working at NASA, helped her every time she applied. She kept taking all of those lessons. And she said that I think is what made her such a successful astronaut.
what are some of the common traits that you found in these people that are just uber successful? I mean, what are there some common traits that you sort of noticed?
There's actually 4 that they all had in common. And that's when I understood that success could be learned. So it started with a physician scientist who I did my doctoral dissertation on. But then as I started
Mhm.
looking at other industries, I realized, oh my goodness, they all do the same 4 things. So that's when I reversed engineered it and created this blueprint. So the first
Mhm.
thing that they have all done was that they had tapped into their passion and their purpose, what we call in adult learning intrinsic motivation, that fire in your belly, what you would do for free if you could. This is why you were put on this earth, right? We have our good friend who heads up our 100 coaches, Marshall Goldsmith. He can't not coach. Even in retirement, he's still coaching, right? That's your intrinsic motivation, right? And this is very different from extrinsic motivation, which is the awards, the diplomas, the gold medal. That's when other people judge you. And when other people judge you, it's really hard to sustain that. And those are usually people that fail, they fail out or they burn out. So tapping into your intrinsic motivation is so important. And that's the first one. Now, the second one, when you figured out what that is, you are going to outwork everyone. And I don't mean you're going to work 18-hour days. I mean, you're going to work much smarter. You're going to figure out what your peak performance hours are. You're going to figure out when you're cognitively focused and do the deep focus work during those times, not the times when you're slower. So for example, I'm a morning person. I will have to do my writing and my editing in the morning, not the afternoon when I start getting much slower and less sharp and will need a hell of a lot more coffee just to get the same work done. I can get more work done by 10, 11 o'clock than I can the rest of the day. So that's what's important to know.
Okay. So you've nailed that
Third
down.
one.
Absolutely.
I was patient zero with this before I ever wrote the book. Now, the third thing is the strong foundation, which they're constantly reinforcing. What they did early in their career, they do later in their career. Neil Katyal argued 45 cases before the Supreme Court of the United States. And I asked him, I said, Neil, what do you do to prepare? And he told me he does 3 things, and he's done the same 3 things for every single case. He prepares a binder with every question he might get asked, and he brings that with him to the case, to the Supreme Court. He said he's never once opened the binder, but just having it really helped prepare him. That's one. 2 is he would have moot courts, which are simulated courts. He did it for every single one of the 45 cases. He did 15 of them early on in his career. Now he still does them. He does 5, but he still does it. He doesn't say, oh, this is my 45th case. I don't need to do this anymore. No, he still does it. And last but not least, the night before the opening arguments, he goes into his children's bedroom as they're going to sleep. And their bedtime story are the basic core principles of the case. Because if it's enough for a child to understand, then he knows that he can get the court to understand. He has done that for every single one of the 45 cases. And look at where it's gotten him. Now that's the third one. The fourth one, despite everything they know, all of these accolades that they've won, they're always trying to learn more. Think of all the billionaires, Mark Cuban, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates. They're notorious for reading 3 to 8 hours a day. But it's not the reading that made them billionaires. It's opening their mind up to new knowledge. It's finding things out and making connections that other people don't see. It's seeing how something's used in one industry and putting it and placing it in another industry. That's innovation. So now Gates and Cuban and Buffett, they do that by reading. But what are some of the other ways that we can learn if we don't have 3 to 8 hours a day? Well, we could certainly read articles. I know you write for Forbes and other places and blogs. You can watch a LinkedIn Live, such as this one. Hopefully we're sharing good stuff. Podcasts, LinkedIn learning courses. You can talk to people. And that was the last piece. All of them had a team of mentors, not just one mentor, a team of mentors who believed in them more than they believed in themselves. They were the guide by their side. So if it's good enough for Olympians and NBA champions and Nobel Prize winners, why do the rest of us think we don't need it? Those are the 4.
I love the way you've laid this out, and I love in the book how you do this. Talk a little bit about some tools that you've put in the book. I mean, I think for example, the passion audit. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So I'm an adult educator by training, right? I teach adults in the workplace how to optimize their success. What kind of an educator would I be what kind of a leadership development practitioner would I be if I tell you what to do without teaching you how to do it? So that's why whenever I talk about intrinsic motivation and your work ethic and the strong foundation and informal learning, I actually teach you how you can implement all of these things in your life starting today. It's all about these micro things you can start doing today. And what I realized, Rhett, is that what works for you is not going to work for me because we're different
Right.
people. And what works for me today will not work for me the next time I have a transition, a new job, a move, a pandemic. So we need to have what I call a buffet of options that we can choose from. So if I've been doing something and it's not working for me anymore, I can try something else. Now, one of the tools that I talk about, and this book actually has resources you can download, because I told you I'm an educator, I have to give you worksheets, is to find what your passion and purpose is, what your intrinsic motivation is. I developed what's
Right.
called a passion audit. You figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you're good at but you don't enjoy, what you procrastinate doing, what you're doing while you're procrastinating, what you would do for free if you could, all sorts of things. It's a 3-column exercise to start honing in on what it is you love doing. So you're not just going through the day and talking about one day I'm going to do this and one day I'm going to do that. Instead of talking about one day, we're making today day one.
Are there some hints that we should, I mean, I think you just kind of lay them out. Like, are there some hints that we should be paying attention to in our lives that sort of
Yeah.
direct us towards what we should be doing?
Yeah. I say
I mean,
look at your weekends. Look at your
okay,
weekends for sure. Because your weekends are your time for most people, right? This is your time. How do you choose to spend your time, right? Do you choose to spend it reading? Do you spend it doing more creative things? Do you spend it volunteering? Where are you volunteering? Seeing what you do on your own time will start to give you insights into what you would actually do for free if you could, because you're already doing it. And the research actually shows us that if we only spend 20% of our time doing what it is that we love doing, those other things are not so depleting. So while I talk about the 4 elements of success and you need to do all 4 of them, if you had to start with one, I would say you must start by figuring out what is your passion and purpose, because the second you tap into that, everything else will fall into place.
how do we build a mentoring team? That's the because I screwed this up early on when I was building a company, and I didn't have uh, the right people to listen
Yeah.
to. I thought I did,
Yeah.
but I was a very green entrepreneur and thought I had the right business people around me. But they didn't get what I was trying to do. They didn't get my vision. I mean, and they thought smaller than I was thinking. And so
Yeah.
we never were really in sync. But how do you build the right mentoring team? Because I thought that was a really great point.
That's another one. See, it says here online resources. That's actually another one of the online resources, is about
Right.
how to actually build the mentoring team. And there's actually layers of the mentoring team. And there are people who
Mhm.
come closer to the circle, and there are people that sort of, as you start advancing in your career, they can become friends, but they don't necessarily serve as your key mentors anymore. And I talk about the different layers of the mentoring team: people who are senior to you, people who are at your level, peer mentors, and then people who are more junior to you. And what are the things that you should be looking for? Now, the mistake most people make is that they only look for people within their industry. And that's actually extremely, extremely limiting, because you're only going to know one way of doing things. What if the problem that needs solving was actually solved in another industry? So my
Mhm.
mentoring team includes people from medicine, science, education, business, law, military, because you never know where you're going to need things. Now, for example, when I wrote the book proposal for The Success Factor, I reached out, one of my mentors now, she was my doctoral advisor years ago. And she has written many books. She knows all about the book proposal process. I also showed it to an editor of a journal and I said, "Can you look this over?" And obviously they ripped it apart and helped me put it back together. I didn't
Right.
show it to the lawyer. on my mentoring team because he's never written anything other than a brief. So why would he look at a book proposal? But when it came
Right.
time for negotiations, who do you think I contacted? Right?
Yeah.
You go to that lawyer who does this all day long. So that is why it's so important to have a diverse mentoring team. And even if it seems like it's not related to what you're doing at all, that's okay because they could have solved a problem. They also give you perspective that you don't necessarily have. And you can learn so much from so many different people.
I think the key word there is team, right? I think often we talk about having a mentor, but what
Yeah,
you're really talking about is having a collective group of people that support your success and your growth. And it's, you go to particular people for particular advice that you know you need. And I think
that's right.
that's a really, really important point. You think that all of the people that you interviewed, if you went back and maybe you asked them this question, do you think that they had mentors? Is that sort of a key to
Oh, I
success
asked
as
them.
well?
They all did. And not just one, they had many. They had many.
Mhm.
And again, this was a very, very diverse group. And that's why I say if a Nobel Prize winner, an Olympic champion can have it, why don't the rest of us? And it's really not so difficult because you don't need to get them around a conference room table. They don't even have to know of each other's existence. You can actually call on different people for different things, but having them in your corner is what's so critical. And actually, in the book, I talk about how you can actually offer to help them before you ever ask them to help you.
I'm glad you
Anyone
said
can
that
do
because I
that.
was going to ask you how you approach somebody. How do how do you do that? Like, and be of value to them too, as
That's
something. I
right.
mean, so that's important to be able to offer something to them.
And everyone has something to offer. Everyone.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I've learned much from some of the younger people on my team, right, about social media and the
Yeah.
platforms. Like, I mean, I learned so much from them about things that absolutely everybody has some value and what they can offer. Um, what is a goal on it?
The goal of the
Hmm.
book.
Yeah, no. What's
The
the
goal
goal?
of,
You talk about a goal audit in the
oh, a
work
goal
which
audit.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That's definitely one of the resources. So very often we have goals, but they're sort of all over the place. And people laugh at me that my goals, they literally fit on a 3x3 post-it note. They're crystal clear. Now, what
Okay.
happens is you need to figure out what your goal is, and then you have to figure out all these other things that you're doing in your life. And then you have to look at, do they support your goal or do they detract from your goal? If they're not supporting your goal, I tell people if it doesn't align, you must resign. At the very least, you need to take a leave of absence because it's detracting your attention and distracting you as well. And when I do this with people, sometimes they're on dozens and dozens of committees and special projects and workforce. And I said to them, how does this actually relate to your goal? And they said, it doesn't, but they're important people in the room. I said, would they notice if you weren't there? They said, probably not. I said, then you don't have to be there. That simple. If
Mm.
they're not even going to notice you're there, get out. Keep that time to work on something that will help you toward your goal. But understanding what that is and knowing how to do it, it's another simple 3-column exercise to do. 2 columns.
What do you think? And the people that you interviewed for the book and in writing the book, what role? The two kind of a two-part question. What role do you think courage played in or courage plays in success?
Courage.
Hmm.
Courage is actually critical because one of the other things that aligned with all the people who I interviewed was that some people fear failure, some people fear success, but the extreme high achievers fear not trying more than they fear failing. They fear
Okay.
not trying more than they fear failing. So they're taking strategic risks and they have a lot of courage. They never question if they will overcome a challenge. They have the confidence that they will. So instead they focus on how to overcome the challenge. What is the strategy I haven't thought of yet? And that's what they put their focus on. So yeah, courage is so critical.
And the second part of that is accountability. So what role do you think accountability is to them, or for them, and sort of this sort of success, achieving such high levels of success in these fields? Is accountability play into that?
It's critical, and actually, this is part of the reason that they have a team of mentors, because the team of mentors really help to hold them accountable. And by doing so, it's sort of this, someone says, "Did you do this? Have you done this? You've been sitting here long enough. You said you were going to do this. You said one day, let's talk about day one." And that's really what the mentoring team can really help you with.
Do you think peer pressure plays a part for them? I mean, that sort of, it's not, it is peer pressure, right? If you have a team of mentors that says to you, why didn't you do what you said you were going to do? I mean, that's pretty powerful.
It's very powerful, but I think it's also it's a good kind of peer pressure. It's the one
Mhm.
that keeps you accountable, that holds your feet to the fire, but you are also need to be able to do it for them as well. It goes both ways.
Absolutely. What what else from the book? I know we need to wrap up, but what other takeaways, I should say? What other takeaways do you want people to have from the book that we hadn't talked
Look,
about?
I think that I am convinced that nobody wakes up in the morning saying, "Today I want to be average. My goal is to be average." I think people really
Right.
want to do good work. I think people want to be successful. But we've been doing all these, this one woke up at 5 a.m. I'll wake up at 5 a.m. That's just throwing spaghetti at the wall. This is really what I created in the success factor, is really a blueprint of how to do it. So there's no more guessing, there's no more wondering. And it's based on science. So it's not that I looked at one industry, I cross pollinated industries. I've interviewed so many people and I know it works. And this is not a quick fix diet. This is, if you want to succeed, there are four things that every astronaut and Nobel Prize winner and Olympic champion and senior political officials have all done. This is attainable for anybody who wants to achieve success. The question is, how badly do you want it? If you want it, the blueprint is there.
Right. I mean, I like this because it gives as Marshall says, sometimes it's easy, but it's hard to do, right? But this is a
That's
system.
right.
I mean, this is a system, and if you want, this is a way to. It's like you said, it's a blueprint. I think that's really the fascinating part about it. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here today. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and I'd love to have you back to follow up because I've got a million more questions. But um, there's so much to dig into here, right? I mean, the psychology of it all. I think I was talking to a group last night. We were talking about a football player before he goes up to penalty kick that's going to win the match. Is it the physical? Is it the skill, or is it the mental? And so much of it is the mental. We sort of settled on 80%
Yeah.
of it's the mental thing at that point, right? And to me, some of
Yeah.
this is it's these people's mental state that gets them that little edge, that little bit of competitive edge that helps them succeed. So I'd love to break that down and talk more about that. I know you've got to do some.
Absolutely. And
Um,
you're going to love Apollo Anton Ohno's story. He's the most decorated Winter Olympian. That story in particular, you'll love. It
yeah,
talks a
I
lot
mean,
about what you just said.
so you have a podcast. Like before we go, tell people you've got a podcast. I can find the book, all that good stuff.
Yes. So the book is called The Success Factor, and wherever you love buying books, it is there. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, independent bookstores. If you want to know anywhere in the world, you could just go to my website, ruthgotian.com/book, and it'll tell you all over the world where you can get the book. And the show that I have is called Optimizing Your Success. And it's through the Mentor Project. So if you just look up the Mentor Project, and you will hear me interview, along with a panel of high achievers who I have, some incredible high achievers, including those who are in the book. which is great. And next week, our guest is Zaza Pachulia from the Warriors, who we both know.
That's right. Yeah. Well, congratulations. I think it's going to be an overwhelming success, and good luck. I think it's. I can't wait to see how this does. And it just came out, right?
So much, Rhett. Just came out yesterday. Just came out yesterday.
That's awesome.
I love it. Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good day. Thank you. And thanks for being here on the program, spending some time with us here today on Power Lunch Live. We will see you next week for another show on Wednesday at 12 noon. And until then, have another great week, productive week, and take care. Be safe.
Bye, everyone.